Welcome. These will be my thoughts on The Flash, Season 1, Episode 4, Going Rogue. The episode is rated TV PG, so this video there will be spoilers for the Arrowverse leading up to and including this episode, not for anything that came out after it, and another episode that I absolutely loved. I did know that at some point Wentworth Miller would appear, and that was something I was looking extremely forward to, and he did not disappoint. It was so nice to see him. Hey, if he can make cold puns throughout the entire episode, so can I. And, yeah, I think I might know who plays Mick, but I guess just in case I'll hold off on saying. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to try to keep it more or less chronological so to not just focus all of everything I have to say in one spot. And then, anyway, yeah, I quite liked the relaxing scene, as Barry calls, he calls it spare time, which, like, is it? It kind of seems more like training, testing, but okay. Good to keep a positive attitude. I do adore the idea of having an actual, like, scientist respond to the game operation with it's not even anatomically correct. And he does ultimately lose the chess game, but he won the other two. And yeah, I really love... So there's several things about Captain Cold that are amazing. So one of them is that here is a villain who he is not a metahuman at all. So we're seeing that, with the right equipment, you can still be formidable against a metahuman. Because there's like 9 seasons of the show, I think, and other Arrowverse shows that have metahumans. If the only thing to pose a threat to a metahuman hero is a metahuman villain, that can get a little bit, at some point we're going to want a little more variety. I think I'll try to cover the rest of the Captain Cold stuff over the course of the video, but yeah, and I did indeed recognize his voice as soon as I heard it, because I will never stop loving Prison Break. It was really cool seeing him play a villain. I have seen Wentworth Miller in a couple of other things, never really as a villain. Although, I don't know, I guess, did some of the other characters on Popular think of him as... I don't know. It's been like 25 years since I watched that show. Anyway, but he absolutely nailed it. And I just read in IMDb trivia that he modeled his delivery on film noir. And the moment that I read that, I was like, yes, absolutely, I see it, or hear it. Because I did notice he does to some extent, you have the intelligence of Michael Scofield, but the charm is completely gone, and sort of the ice cold, detached kind of aspect of his character is turned to 11. And he is just openly, like, he really doesn't hold back at all. Like, he is willing to kill anyone if it gets him the diamond. So the yeah, I think that does cover it. Yeah, and the one of the guys in his crew, first points the gun at the guard, and then when Flash shows up, does indeed shoot the guard. And that, again, also, we have this thing of, like, yeah, Barry is fast enough that he can outrun bullets. The people he saves are not. So there is still that, this was very much an episode about how important it is to Barry to save as many people as he can. Like, clearly it is deeply upsetting for him that, he was not able to save, that one guard, which is also, that's such a great, see, outside of comic book media and stuff inspired by it, you just don't see someone running superhumanly fast to run faster than a projectile, something being fired through the air in order to save someone. Like, that's such a fun visual. And yeah, ultimately they are not able to get the loot. They have to just make an escape. And I think the very next thing was right. That was loved the let's see. Do they call it a match cut when it's a fade? No, it's just a fade. But the yeah, fade from right after they leave, and we're seeing the truck, the transport, and then fade to later when the cops are on scene, but not unseen. And Barry, the thing about, like, there were 3 guys. No, there were 4. I mean, that's how I would do it. See, there's 4. Yeah, I agree with Joe. He needs to get better at improvising on his feet. And I think that does... Yeah, we have the part where he, I like, Joe is just thinking, I don't know, just take your time, see if you can find it, and he just flips through the photos within like seconds, like, oh, here he is. And the yeah, the thing about, yeah, Joe says, his dad was a cop, a bad one. Is there any other kind in America? Okay. And the certainly there isn't a good ICE agent. And now I really want, if someone does make this, please don't use AI, but I wouldn't mind seeing Captain Cold be the one to fire ice that clown ICE agent slips on. That was delightful. See, you probably should know enough about ICE to not pull a Buster Keaton, especially in public, but people don't like you when everyone laughs at you and you have to run away with your tail tucked between your legs. Like, I'm not the first person to note it, but mockery and shame is part of how we're going to, get ICE to stop with the fascism. Not violence. But I obviously don't even really have to say that to leftists. I'm just saying it just in case a conservative catches wind and is going to pretend like we're the ones with the violent rhetoric. No, that's you guys' trademark. Anyway, I think the next thing is Iris and yeah. Right. Iris brings coffee, and Joe is like, I am a cop named Joe. I don't want a cup of Joe. I don't like puns this early in the morning. And yeah, she's like, oh, that, the silent treatment. And I like how she describes, I'm not going to talk to you, but I have a bag of, judgmental looks that I'm going to try out on you later. And Barry acknowledges he's been on the receiving end of some of those. And then Iris mentions the blog, which I quite appreciate that we go right from, her mentioning that and them talking about it to Felicity showing up because, she read the blog. And yeah, I wouldn't rule out that she might even know, that it is Iris who, even if it is an anonymous blog, not anomalous. And yeah, I don't know if, because she said, there's so much nerd rage online. Were there people who didn't like Felicity's character that I don't know. I do appreciate she would definitely have encountered that, but even if, like, I mean, in universe, but I don't know. If you don't like Felicity, you're gonna have to really argue well to get me to. I mean, I'm never gonna agree, but I guess I might understand it if you do a really great job arguing. But otherwise, like, just she's one of the best characters of the Arrowverse so far, and I really appreciate it. That's the thing with crossovers. You got to be careful to either keep it consistent or explain why there is an inconsistency. And here, like, the writing for her character is 100% consistent with the on Arrow. So really appreciated that. And let's see, yeah, I appreciated that, Iris does know of Felicity. They just never met before. And yeah, Felicity wants to see. And as usual, she has the dialogue that she really doesn't mean to be suggestive. I want to see it. By it, I mean your super speed, not anything else that you might have been thinking. And let's see, does that, yeah, and also Barry's reaction when he hears about the blog, because he's obviously thinking, like, if she looks too deeply into this, she might realize that that's me. I appreciate that I guess it's not impossible to do it later, but so far have managed to avoid the giving into the temptation to have, you know, like, they could so easily have an episode start with us seeing Barry move, and then it slows down to like a still record scratch. Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I ended up in this situation. Anyway, I think that does bring us to the is that when I think that's when Captain Cold, admonishes one of the guys working for him, and yeah, the guy says, "I want out," and so the captain shoots him and says, "Well, if you're out, you're out." And I just so badly want there to be an outtake where he goes, "You know what? On second thought," and the let's see. Yeah, I really thought it worked well the way that, yeah, he starts with three guys, and by the end of the episode, all three of them are, no longer working with him, but he does start working with Mick. And yeah, that's kind of tells you something about, because the other two are like, listen, we're not going to stick around until you shoot us too. So, like, this is a thing with him. He shoots people who, and I appreciate, he certainly shoots people who try to, resign from working for him. But yeah, the I think that is that entire scene. Also, really great posing by him. They really nail the comic booky thing, and the framing also. He really feels like a villain. The visual language was put to good use there. I think that might be when Iris suggests, trivia night, which I also really like the thing about. I get enough nightlife in Starling City, because, like, yeah, that's I mean, potentially she's talking about the fact that they fight crime on a nightly basis, but she might also be talking about the fact that, last time she went to, like, well, yeah, she's gone to a couple of parties on Arrow. She ends up getting shot at and or a bomb strapped to her, so it's not exactly her favorite thing. And yeah, the thing about, like, yeah, $75 worth of cappuccino, and she's like, yum. See, I think that reaction is, like, she wants an excuse to spend time with Barry. Like, as soon as she heard that, because, like, yeah, nightlife, like, she maybe doesn't want to go to a club or something, but she can spend some time with Barry and indulge in nerdism. So, yeah. And I really appreciated that. Yeah, that's actually, I think, the next scene where, yeah, Barry is like, why are you doing the double date thing? Why are you forcing that? And, she points out very accurately, you two are both the species of adorable nerd. And yeah, we have another, friend zone-ish thing of, she says she could appreciate, or she does appreciate what a wonderful person I'm always saying you are, and we see the look on Barry's face where it's like, well, if you think I'm so amazing, why won't, so far I think they're handling it well. It's the kind of thing that played well in comic books, decades ago, but, by now a lot of us when we take in media, we'd rather not. It's the big thing is for it to not end up like blaming her for, like, he could choose to tell her, that's one of the big things that have been a problem with friend zoning plot lines. Now, in both fiction and reality, when a guy decides that it's somehow her fault, that he doesn't just come out and tell her that he has feelings for her, like she's supposed to be some mind reader. Anyway, I think this might be a decent time to just briefly note. So if you think the person that you feel has friend zoned you would be receptive to it, maybe tell them how you feel. And if you just really don't want to be their friend, if it's not going to lead to more, just be honest about that. Don't act like they're forcing you to, like, you're making the choice to pretend to be their friend, or perhaps even be their friend, but really you're thinking about more than that, like, just, yeah. I think that, yeah, so we have the bit with the two cops, and yeah, Eddie, like, Eddie, the fact that he now knows that you two are a thing, you and his daughter, doesn't mean he wants to hear about it. And yeah, the yeah, Joe saying, we're not friends. And then the radio with, when a man loves a woman, and then let's get it on. Yeah, probably a good move to just turn the radio off entirely at that point. I think that might be when he gets the cold gun. And yeah, the very clever to introduce the, okay, so this is the fire gun, got that, audience? And here's the cool thing. Oh, you should put on the sunglasses. They'll make you look cool. Oh, and they'll protect you, I guess. And then like, who else knows about this? Just the two of us? No, just me. And he gives him the cold shoulder, and the rest of him, just to even things out. And yeah, I mean, that guy wasn't even saying that he wouldn't work with him anymore. That's just like, yeah, he's tying up loose ends. And I think that might be when the yeah, I believe that's the tour of the museum, right? And I really like also we have the exchange about, he notes that he knows how long it takes for cops to respond, so there's no way that the Flash should have been able to get there so fast, and as soon as he has a chance, he gets, he ups his game, as he says. And he even says, thank you for that. I like the challenge, which is just chilling. And then we have the guess that's when he goes to the museum, and I really love the so there's several things there. So oh, I guess it has been a little while since I talked about the things I love about Captain Cold. So yeah, another thing is the fact that by the end of this episode, he is still at large, because that's another thing, we've had 3 episodes now. 2 of them ended up dead, the last one in a cage. So it's like, are we really not going to have anyone just running around out there waiting for the right moment to strike, kind of thing? Because that's one of the fun things about comic book media, the idea that they're out there and suddenly they're gonna pop back up. Maybe they'll have some new gadget, or they'll have trained their superpower to be able to do something that they weren't before, that sort of thing. And yeah, I can hardly wait to see more of Captain Cold. That's gonna be so cool. Did you think I was kidding when I said that there were gonna be cold puns throughout this entire video? But yeah, then we have the museum. I can't praise this writing enough. Snart gets the cops called on him for going through the tour twice. Nobody does that. I just want him, I want him to get his day in court. And for the judge to say, you have been charged with 1 count of going through a museum tour twice. That's amazing. And let's see, and gives the kid a stick of gum, and then says, oh, we wouldn't want that about the proximity, and that's when I thought of an old Danish movie where if it went down the same, he would have actually gotten the kid to touch it. So it's like, well, what are you going to do? Arrest the kid for, yeah. Anyway, another thing I really can't get enough of the museum scene is, the greatest hero in this city's history saved 17 cows, which, to be clear, that's great. Any friend of animals it's just, that's, yeah. But I think the Flash might, at least in time, top. Right. Don't think I didn't catch the Black Adam reference. That's awesome. And I'm not saying that necessarily means that Black Adam is going to make an appearance in the Arrowverse. It's perfectly fine if he doesn't, but just the fact that, as like a comic book reader, these little things to make it, because you could have that as just a throwaway reference. That doesn't mean that he has to show up. And I think that's when the oh, I think I missed the part where that's my problem. No, that's not it. No, the yeah, him showing the powers to Felicity by running around up in the building, and he took a picture and like, don't put it on Instagram, and the yeah, your shoes is working. Yeah, they're trying to kick the habit. I didn't say all the puns were going to be ice related. And yeah, he takes her to the labs, Star Labs, and Kate being like, Felicity, it's so great to see you. How much of our operation is she gonna see? And yeah, the thing about, oh, don't worry, she can keep a secret. She works for Arrow. But apparently you can't keep a secret. So do you know who the Arrow is? And Felicity like, don't even think about it, and Barry like, no. And I think that does, yeah. Felicity beaming with pride at Dr. Wells knowing her achievements, and he's so personable with her, not so much with Cisco over the course of the rest of this episode, with please call me Harrison. Mr. Harris was my father's name. And she sees the what's it called, treadmill, And, she expresses some concern about, is this safe for him? So yeah, she definitely does care, and I think over the course of this episode, the little hints of romance, I get the sense that there's like A/B testing, like they're seeing, is this something people want to see? Because like hypothetically, both of them are single, they're pining for someone else, but I've seen romances where that kind of thing, I mean, I've seen romances where the two who are pining for other people end up together, and then one of the people, at least one of the people being pined after, becomes available, maybe even expresses feelings, and then it's like, well, am I going to go to the person I was pining for, or am I going to stay in this happy relationship with the person that was not my first choice, kind of thing? So yeah, they have options. I would very much be happy to see them together. Did I already say that on the other? Because it's not the first time that there's the potential for, but yeah, and that was a great kiss at the end of the episode. I think that's when we get the trivia night, and yeah. You know what, Eddie? You seem like a good guy, so I'm going to overlook the fact that you don't even know the name of the Millennium Falcon by heart. But yeah, the two of Barry and Felicity sitting there, and like there's one of them where there's like, wait, is that, they like get one wrong at least at first, but overall they do really nail it. And yeah, I agree with Iris. Listen, I'm not a clothologist, but I'm pretty sure that kind of dress means more than friendship. That's yeah. And Eddie going like, feel free to buy that dress for yourself, which it's one of those things like, I mean, that's better than him staring at someone that's not his girlfriend when he has a girlfriend. And, like, I don't know. It's not for me to say. I know some women are okay with that kind of comment. Some are not. He doesn't have to be like a flawless character or something. And, best if he isn't, really. Yeah, we have the thing about, Eddie getting the call, and, Felicity has to make up an excuse for, and yeah, I agree with Barry. Those are not the most appealing choices of, and then, a new level of odd for Felicity. She's talking to Air for several seconds, several lines after he runs off. And yeah, I did like the thing about, you woke up out of the coma. You didn't call, you didn't write. And I think that brings, yeah. So he shows up at the museum, and, Captain Cold, yeah, he zaps Flash with or hits him with the cold. And you also have, yeah, he tests the Flash's speed, shooting at civilians, knowing that, any moment now he might actually kill someone. Like, he doesn't even only kill guards or loose ends or people who no longer want to work for him. That's one way of doing a severance package. And yeah, genuinely devastating when Barry, they push it as far as they can on TVPG, but yeah, he is frozen. I also really like that we don't see it fully happen to the first. We just, like, we can tell we're already told yes, it's ice, but we don't know exactly what it looks like, what the gun does to someone until, that, so it's more dramatic that way. We have the build-up to the actual reveal there. I feel like that is that entire scene. Yeah, and we have, Cisco. Oh, I think that scene came before. Anyway, yeah. Dr. Wells asks, how long has it been missing? And yeah, Cisco being like, I don't know. Yeah, if you know the answer, don't tell a scientist that you don't know. That's just a helpful little tip. And yeah, he gets understandably frustrated and brings it up again later in the episode. And right, I also really liked when Dr. Wells, I'm sorry, Harrison, said, I foresee great things for Felicity, which does that mean that the time thingy, the one that shows him the future, has already shown him things about her? That's how many people is he watching? I guess this was the first episode where the post-credit scene was not about Harrison, wasn't it? Because this one was the two brothers. Yeah, I think that does bring us to, yeah, and the thing about well, Snart couldn't have built the cold gun, and I appreciate that Harrison starts by saying it came from Star Labs, and then Cisco comes clean and says Dr. Wells and Kate had nothing to do with it. It was all me. And then we get the explanation, which I also really appreciate. Earlier when Harrison asks, how long has the gun been missing? Cisco's like, if you just let me explain, so we can tell. Oh, okay, there was he wasn't just like screwing around or something. And he explains he wasn't sure if he would need to stop Barry one day, and that's yeah. I guess I won't give away exactly what I have seen. Stuff like that in comic books where someone will try to make a plan for how to stop their ally and friend, and Barry saying, dude, you can tell me. That's too vague of a reference. Okay, Oral Knots, Existential Troopers, both parts fantastic. I should recommend a more recent video. I quite enjoyed Movies with Mark video, James Rolfe and Movie Curiosity, I think it was called. Rister 2 sorta check right now, right this moment. Anyway, I think, yeah, and so the, let's see, yeah, I really appreciate the weight it was given that Barry was not able to save this guy, and Cisco is at least partially to blame, both for making the gun and not telling Barry, because if he had known that there was a cold gun out there. And I also really appreciate, and I believe this is accurate to the comics as well, this idea, and I mean, makes sense in the real world as well. Yeah, like cold is the opposite to speed, which is part of why the cold moving so fast in The Day After Tomorrow was particularly silly. I agree that we need to do more, to combat climate change, but that movie did not do that good of a job of it. It made a lot of people just mock the sound scientific theory. But yeah, own goal. Anyway, I think that might bring us to the, let's see. Yeah, so Barry is, running on the treadmill, and, Felicity shows up as, the thing about like, what are you doing here? You should be back at your hotel room relaxing. So should you. I mean, relaxing. Not at my hotel. I'm not sure I'm ever going to tire of her, you know, saying the, yeah. saying things that could be taken entirely the wrong way. And yeah, we get the, they found a way, or Cisco found a way to track the cold gun, and so the let's see, is that when we have the, yeah, I think that's the, yeah. And so the thing about, like, it's now, we can just hack, you know then we'll have the, we'll be able to pinpoint it. Give me an hour. And she's like, I can do it in a minute. Or I forget if it was an hour, but it was certainly longer. And then she was like, when it comes to hacking, I am the fastest woman alive. So really, really cool that so that's again the thing. If you're going to bring a character from somewhere else over, make sure they get something really compelling to do. And that's the thing. Like, she is a much better hacker. Like, the characters on this show are amazing at other things, but hacking is not like primary thing. Like, they're able to do it, but it's not. Yeah. And the I guess that is when they find it. Yeah. And so, right after the thing about, when we're a team, we can do anything. And then Barry turns off I think it was Cisco saying that. And then Barry turns off the thing and says, I don't feel like talking right now, which, like, can't really blame him. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think this is going to go well, though. That's, yeah. And so they, yeah, I quite liked, Captain Cole just has to say, do you want to end up like that door? And right, I also really like when the two guys quit, and he says, if you don't shoot me now, next time I see you, And that brings us to, so yeah, he gets on the train, and Barry is indeed, more powerful than a locomotive, which is, of course, a mentally ill reason to do a crime. And yeah, very clever that, he gets on, he says, next time you try to escape from me, you may want to pick something faster. And Captain Cole just points out, that's if I wanted to escape. Because that's the thing, like, Barry is still, he's very young. He needs to, get better at not jumping into situations. So appreciate that being a running character trait. And I just realized I completely neglected to mention. So I already talked about Joe talking to Eddie, but there's also when Joe talks to Iris, and that actually happens twice. So I'll just briefly do both. Yeah, he points out, he can't be 100% focused because now Eddie is also dating his daughter. And that is a thing that I have heard from, like, actual people in law enforcement and other dangerous jobs. That is something that really affects them. So nicely done getting it on the show. And Iris saying, there's nothing you could ever do that would make me look differently at you. Which I don't know if it's going to be a setup for, like, if she finds out that he knows not only who the Streak is. Yeah, at this point in the show, they call him the Streak. Not because he likes to show off his physique. But not only did he know, but he knew it was Barry. Like, he knew a secret about Barry that he wasn't sharing with her. I could imagine that could cause friction. But yeah, really, really clever. This thing of, Captain Cold, ices the, what are they called? Wheels. And yeah, really, really enjoyed seeing, Barry running back and forth, getting people out of the train cars. And forget if I've already said, but I definitely do continue to really appreciate the way that they'll have the camera, sometimes, not always, not necessarily still, sometimes it is like moving, but instead of the camera zipping around all of the time, at least, to follow Barry, we're seeing Barry zip around in the frame, which, among other things, enables us to see how fast other things are moving. So, the contrast is stronger than if the camera was constantly following him around. And this is, again, something I think the DCEU could have done more like that. I think it works incredibly well here. And I appreciate maybe they were worried that people would think, oh, so it's just like the show, which, some of, I guess all of the DCEU, this show was on air, wasn't it? Or all of the DCEU where Flash was part of it, at least. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that does bring us to, yeah. And so, afterwards, Captain Cold just has to walk up and hit him with, the gun, and he thinks he's got it, and then Cisco shows up, and that was generally a great bluff. It's the vacuum cleaner, but with a bunch of LEDs on it, because he didn't, we saw him say, I think I have something that can help. He didn't say, it's okay, I made another freeze gun, because at that point, once we find out, oh, no, this is just a vacuum cleaner, it'd be like, well, why didn't you bring the freeze gun? You mentioned it in the other scene, but I think I have something that can help. It's just vague enough that when we saw it, I 100% thought that was really the prototype, as he claimed. And yeah, the thing about okay, now, leave the diamond, don't push your luck, kid. And he doesn't even turn around. Cool guys don't need to look at the people they're talking to. And I think that does get us to the I guess I'll just very briefly talk about, so yeah, the post-credits bit. I can hardly wait to see. It's such a great way to get across, I had heard about the character of Mick, so I wasn't sure if he was going to appear in the first episode that Captain Cold did, but to have just, he's constantly, as soon as we, before, we haven't even seen his face by the end of this episode, but we certainly do see, he's got a, instead of using a flashlight to look at, he's got, even before he knows there's something to look at, he's already got a lit match out. And then he also uses it as if it's a flashlight, holding it close to look at the thing. Just, yeah. See, if I had to guess, I would think fire is indeed something he still likes to play with. I feel like there's at least one more thing I really wanted to say. So I'll definitely briefly talk about, so yeah, it was, I quite liked the, yeah, Felicity gets back on the train, and, her first thought when she sees him is, please tell me you're not here to rescue me, And then we have the Superman movie reference of, is it planes or is it trains? Because depending on which Superman movie you watch, he says different things, or, which, I guess technically both can be true. Anyway, yeah, they, and he, she's like, so Iris is the girl you're pining for, and then he's like, so Oliver's the guy you're pining for, when it takes one to know one. See, he's still young enough that it's not too corny for him to say that. If he was 10 or 20 years older, it'd be like, okay, that's a little cringe. But the, yeah, and it's only fair, if she's gonna be so direct about who he's pining for, that he also, talks about, yeah. I think, does that bring us? And I appreciate the build-up to the kiss. Like, I can imagine teenagers were probably swooning while watching this originally. At first they're just sitting across from each other, and then the camera goes in closer, and one of them is in frame, and the other one leans in. And there were like a couple of seconds there where I was like, are they really gonna end this without a kiss? Like, come on, man. And yeah, they do indeed kiss. And I feel like that brings us to the I liked the way that this episode had Harrison, the intensity that we've seen, in the post-credit scenes and such is starting to spill over into regular day. Like, it's very clear Kate and Cisco are not quite used to seeing him like that. I also really like Kate trying to stand up for Cisco, pointing out, we built the particle accelerator to help, and it blew up. And I think there's at least one more thing that I want to make sure to say. I thought this worked well as a way to, the IMDb trivia notes that it was in part to make sure people really think of, like, yeah, this is the same universe. Now both shows have had characters from the other show. Well, I guess in this one it's just the one character, but still, at least one character from each show has guested in at least one episode from the other's show. So, and it again works as this thing of, like, I mean, hypothetically, let's say you watch only The Flash, and this is like the first time that, first time you see Felicity, and it's, this thing of the what's the word? And I guess this would also be the first mention of Arrow, I think. Hypothetically, I mean, you got some homework to do then. There's 2 seasons out of that show before this, but this doesn't really spoil anything. I mean, it doesn't even, no, yeah. It gives so few details that you could, after watching this episode, go back and watch those, the Arrow that you've missed up to this point, and it wouldn't really have said, like, it's just, she's seen Oliver do the salmon climbing, was that what it was called? And she is part of that. She's part of Team Arrow, but they didn't trust each other. They weren't a fully functioning unit immediately. And I also really appreciate that, acknowledging, these two teams are a little different for that reason. Barry is, as of the pilot episode of this, he entered into this group that was already together. And they have to find a way to, clearly there's not as much trust as Barry thought there was. And that, again, there's room for growth. They can develop that trust over, episodes. And yeah, I really appreciate, like, the idea of Captain Cold and Mick. That's really going to be great. That is very exciting. It's not something I'm hot and cold on. Thought I'd squeeze in one more. And I did really appreciate, during the train, the thing about, like, wait, I thought flying was the most safe way to travel. Yeah, I remember the time before Trump's second term too.